We've always loved the idea of the IKEA loft beds. It gives your children extra space for more play. We're going to modify this bed, but we're not going to do any structural changes. The only thing that's going to be done is adding strength, if anything. This is, after all, a kid's bed. At 7 years old, my son read Robinson Crusoe, and it became one of his favorite books at the time. So that inspired me to create an island cave-themed bed for him. Never underestimate the crafting skills we learned as a child. Playing with cardboard boxes and papier-mâché allow us to not only learn, but be playful, and allow our minds to go to a place where we didn't know what was possible. I play the same way today, with heavier materials and some papier-mâché. Nothing in this project requires special tools. Everything that we'll do, you can do with hand tools and nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing in this was planned. Everything was trial and error. I did what I felt was right. All of the drawings that you see were completed afterwards. So let's get started. We went to our local home center and got paint swatches. From that swatch, we chose 3 colors. The lightest color we're using for the room and the ceiling itself. The next dark color we're using for our back trees. I only needed to buy a quart of that. Channel your inner Bob Ross and take a simple sponge just to blotch in what looks like a tree. Those background trees are going to be sprayed over with that light paint. It looks like it fades into mist. The second layer of trees is a bit darker. It shows that it's closer to us than the other ones. We went to our local home center and bought rattan fencing at various sizes. I'm stapling the rattan to the ceiling. This is only temporary. You'll even see I overlap it here. I happen to be lucky enough to have a friend that owns a bamboo farm. I'm sure there's many ways to buy these online. Here we have trimmed parts of a rattan fence that we're using for an overhang. At the dollar store, I grabbed a few grass hula skirts, using for a tiki hut feel. It's always a great idea when you're doing a huge project to start to get key pieces done so it looks like you're making progress. It inspires you to keep going. Here we are cutting random shapes. One is just a little bit larger than the other so that I don't want them to line up perfectly. For most of this project, we're going to be using oriented strand board, which is called OSB. You can get that at the home center. We will also be using 2x4s for much of the structure. What we're using here is lath that we can get from the home center. It's used for stucco. Stucco is a type of mortar. It's cement and sand, and its adhesive allows it to stick to concrete and lath. We can form the lath in any shape that we want to make smooth or textured surfaces. We're going to be using it here to form rocks. Here we're cutting a piece of OSB that's going to be used for the headboard. This is the ceiling of the cave. This may look odd, but what we're doing with this chicken wire and tape is wrapping it so that we'll be able to use a paper mache. This needs to be soft because we are going to bump our heads on this. It's inevitable. I'd rather bump my head on something that's malleable than stone. We're assembling 2 large pieces of OSB here with a hole in the center that's going to make a makeshift window. The only straight lines in this project are going to be for a bookshelf that we're putting on the one side. We're cutting those pieces here. It's also going to have a shelf and be the top of the bookshelf. This is a window of sorts, as we don't want it to be too dark in the cave beneath the bed. We don't want to make it too high because it'll interfere with the waterfall. I mean, you can't have an island theme without a waterfall, right? Anything that's going to be touching water is going to be covered with a fiberglass cloth and resin. The lath that we have here is actually housing the container that's going to hold the water for the waterfall. Some of the same rattan fencing used in the ceiling overhang will be trimmed to fit the bed. We're trimming down some bamboo and pretty much hiding anything that resembles a bed. Now that our forms are ready, we can begin to stucco. We're going to mix up small amounts of stucco inside of a small bin and simply press it into the lath. You could also press it onto the OSB. OSB is used for roofs in your house, so it can actually handle a little bit of water. It's not going to deform when exposed to water for such a short period of time as this dries. Now that we have everything built, all we need to do is paint. We're going to be adding sand to the paint for the gray that we'll be using in the papier-mâché. The stucco is going to be painted the same way, but since it's gritty, using that sand will help us transition from a rough surface to a smooth surface. Here, you'll see that we just bought paint from the home center. It's a basic gray, and we're making a base coat on the entire rock. We also have a darker color, which is just a few shades darker, and we're making a mixture, 75% water to 25% paint, to give us what's called a wash. What happens when you put this on is you can put it on with a sponge, and it goes into the little cracks and crevices and makes them darker, and the paint that we put on previously will show through. After that's dry, we could do another thing called dry brushing. And that's all we do is we take white paint and wipe most of it off of the brush, and then we're just going to drag it lightly over the top of the surface, showing all the high spots. So you'll have the dark spots where the wash went through, and you'll have the medium color which we originally painted, and you'll have the highlights, which will actually make it look like a rock. I hope you liked this project. Thanks for checking it out. If you'd like to help us out, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. See you next week.